Okay, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time that you are watching this video. I am Richard Taylor with Taylor House Publishing, coming to you live at the VASS Retreat 2023. Now, VASS stands for Victims Advocate Support Services, and what they do is support members of the community who have lost members of their family to gun violence. And today I have Mrs. Lucille
Puckett.
Puckett, and she is from Charlotte, North Carolina, and she lost her son to gun violence 6 years
16,
ago
6, 7.
in 2016. So, tell the audience a little bit about your son and a little bit about the instances that led up to his unfortunate and untimely death.
Yes, my son's name is Shawn Lamar Harbin Jr. He was 26 when he was murdered, March the 22nd of 2016. He's a father. He have 3 beautiful daughters. He was a mechanic. He loved working on cars. His nickname was Mr. Cutterfood.
Mr. What?
Cutterfood.
Cutterfood. Okay, so he cut a
Because
food.
when he worked on a car, whether it was his mechanic, he painted, he reupholstered the inside, whatever you needed done to a car, he cut a food. He mixed up his own paint. When his cars was going down the street, they knew that that was something that Mr. Cutterfood did. I mean, he was just so, I would say, hell of a,
Okay.
that even after his passing, he had several people that the cars that he did on the back of their car was Mr. Cutterfood.
Mr. Cutterfood.
Yes. So one of his other nicknames was 1800. And I guess if you drink or anything like that, you know why he was 1800.
Okay.
Because no matter what time of day, no matter what time of afternoon, evening, when Mr. Cutterfood pulled up on the scene, he had 1800. And he was gonna let you get a little toasted
Okay.
on his dollar.
Okay.
He loved fast cars. He loved racing. He even went to NASCAR. That was, that's a school where, all the NASCAR drivers go and, you learn the mechanics and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So he's very
And-
much into cars.
Very much into cars. He even at one point said he wanted to be a sheriff, just so you know how the sheriffs lead the funerals. And they
Okay.
go real fast to get in front of the other car so they can block that
okay.
intersection
So he
just
like
to
to
go
drive fast.
just to drive
Okay.
fast, just to drive fast. And that's why I say, if my son had a pass saying a car fell on top of him, or he was speeding, or he was doing donuts and his car flipped, anything pertaining to a car, I would have understood. But how my son was murdered,
And how old was he at the time of
26.
26? And what was his name again?
Shawn
Shawn.
Lamar Harbin. He was a
Shawn
junior.
Lamar
Harbin.
Harbin. Okay. So yeah, tell us about the incident leading up to his death.
Like I said, my son was a mechanic, and someone brought a truck to my son's shop for my son to totally restore it. And my son had took out the motor, he had took out the transmission, and after 4 months, the person did not come back to get their car or bring them the motor and the transmission that they were supposed to bring him.
Did
So-
they pay him beforehand?
They gave him $1,100 to get started.
Okay.
That was just to get started.
That was just to take the motor out and the transmission, and then they were supposed to bring him the other materials to finish the job.
They were supposed to bring him the motor and the transmission to finish the job, and then there would have been further payments.
Okay.
So after 4 months, the person did not bring back the motor, the transmission, and my son called him and said, you're holding up space in my shop, and I need you to either come and get your car or bring me the parts that I need to complete the job. So the guy said that he just wanted his money back. And my son said, where do they do that at? That don't happen. My son said if you would have took it to somebody else's shop and your car was there 4 months, it wouldn't even been there 4 months.
Yeah, they would have actually started
They would
charging
put a
you a storage space,
or
and
either
then
put a
probably
lien
sold-
on the
yeah, they would've
put a
sold
lien
it.
on the car and a truck, and actually you wouldn't have had it. So the guy said, that he was going to get his money back one way or another. And we never knew that meant that he was going to come to our house one night when my son was on his way in from work and take my son's life. And people knew where they can find my son at, because even growing up, I always kept my son near and at home. His friends was able to come to my house versus my son being in the street. And that way I knew where my son was. So they knew my son was coming home that night. And they also knew that he was coming home that night because it was a Tuesday.
Okay.
And my son did $2 Tuesday at Onyx, and that's a strip club in Charlotte.
Okay.
So he was going to do his $2 Tuesday.
$2 Tuesday. Now, what was $2? Was lap dances $2?
It was the lap dances. It was the drink $2. Everything up
Chicken
in
wings
there.
$2.
Anything up in there, it was $2. Okay. So he got the gang, and the gang knew that they was finna be up in there. And my son had his dollar bills because he was gonna pay for his dances, and he was gonna pay for other people's dances, and he was gonna pay for people's drinks.
Yeah, he was cut of food.
He was cut of food. Absolutely, he was gonna show people a good time. That's absolutely correct. So as my son was coming home, me and my old man, we was just coming in from dinner, and we was sitting in the car. My son pulled up, and it was another.
About what time was it?
It was, I would say about 8 o'clock, about 8:15 in the evening.
8:15 in the evening?
Yeah.
So he had already left the strip club at that time?
No, he was coming home from work to get dressed. Because they had to be in the door by 10.
Okay.
So he was coming home to get all freshed up and, things like that. But he had another customer that had brought another truck, and it was in front of my neighbor's house next door.
Okay.
So we don't do that. We respect other people's, space or whatnot. And while me and my old man, we were sitting there, we noticed, another car across the street in front of another neighbor's house. But that neighbor wasn't home because the driveway was empty. So we figured that person was just sitting there waiting on the people to come home, didn't want to pull in their driveway, because, hey, it ain't your house.
Okay.
So we thought they were sitting there waiting. So we really wasn't paying them no attention. We sitting there chilling, listening to music. But when my son pulled up, he kind of walked past my car and looked in there and saw my food, and he looked like,
Your son did?
Yeah.
Okay.
My son looked like, I'm going to be back. I'm finna give me some of that. And I'm looking at him, and I'm smiling as he walking past the car, to go move the other truck out from my neighbor's house.
Okay, so he's going to move the other customer's truck.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when my son walked by, that car pulled over, like, behind my car.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that person was coming to talk to my son, maybe the customer, for that car, and coming to let him know what, was finna, what he needed him to do to the car, or, just one of his friends. Because who knew somebody was finna pull up to my house and kill my son? And, I always told my son that, in this day and time, being a black man, you don't need a gun. You don't carry a gun because that's going to cause two things. Either, the police that gives them an excuse or reason to, mess with you.
Exactly.
Or you looking for trouble.
You get mad and then you have access to it, so you'll be able to use it yourself.
So, or either you're looking for trouble. So my son didn't carry a gun, and I regret that to this day because I just felt like if my son had a gun, then things would have been different. But, they stood out there and they was talking for about maybe 5 minutes, or 4 or 5 minutes or so. And then I heard it raise voices. And I told my old man, I said, baby, it sounds like they arguing. So I turned my radio down, and the voices went back to normal. So I was like, okay, that's his friend. They talking. How boys do. They get loud, or whatnot. So about another minute or two.
So y'all was in the house at this time?
No, we were still sitting in the car.
You and your son, you and your old man.
Yeah, we were still sitting in the car. We were just, out there chilling, and about another minute or two went by, and I heard a car door slam, boom. So I looked back, and I saw my son running toward the house. So I'm looking like maybe he got something in his eye, maybe, I don't know. And the guy got out of the car, and he was following behind my son. And I got out the car, and I was like, hey, what's going on? What are y'all doing? And the guy turned, and he looked at me, and he said, I don't know if I'm allowed to say exactly what he said.
You can definitely say what he said.
And he said, shut the fuck up, bitch.
So the guy said that to you
me.
After or before he started shooting?
Before.
Okay. Go ahead.
And then he, the guy turned to look at me, and he turned back and shot my son. He shot my son one time in the back. And he started shooting at me, pow, pow. He shot at me at least twice before I put my head down. And I put my head down, and he was steady shooting, and he started walking toward me. Before he started walking toward me, he had already shot my son one time in the chest, one time in the back, and then he shot my son one time in the chest, and he started walking toward me. And I had my head down, and I saw my son walking behind him as if he was saying, "You're not going to hurt my mom, you're not going to kill my mom." And what I really believe, the reason that my son stopped in his tracks is because he had his mother on the outside and he had his sisters and brothers on the inside. So he felt that I can't continue to run in the house because if I go in the house, I'm putting my brothers and sisters in danger. So I have to stay out here and I have to protect my mom. So he was walking toward me as the guy was shooting. He was walking behind the guy.
So the guy was actually shooting at you?
At me. And my son fell. And when my son fell, the guy acted as if he was walking back toward his car. He took like 4 or 5 steps going toward his car, and he stopped, and he turned around, and he came back, and he stood over my son, and he shot my son 3 times in the head. The first time he shot my son in the head, I saw my son's body rise and fall. The second 2 times, my son didn't move, and I knew my son then was gone. That guy acted as if he had just dapped my son up, and he started walking toward his car. He got in his car and he drove off. He didn't turn on no lights. He didn't speed. He didn't do anything. And, at that point, my old man, we tried to turn around and go after the car.
So y'all got, what was your old man doing at the time? Was he still in the car?
He was still in the car. He was, I guess it all happened so fast. He was like,
definitely.
In a state of shock.
But you got out the car.
But I had got out the car.
Okay.
And after it was all over, I never knew how I actually got back in the car to even put my head down because as a mother, I felt that I should have been outside with my son, protecting my son. So, after it was all over and I was talking about what happened and he said, "Do you know how you got back in the car?" And I was like, "No."
He came
and he said, "I pulled you back
Yeah.
in the car." And my response at that time is like, "Nigga, what the you want? You want an Oreo cookie?" Because I felt like you pulled me back in the car to protect me, but all at the same time, you left my son, out there. So I didn't even speak to him for probably about 3 or 4 months. I was just so angry, even at him, because you're going to tell me you pulled me back in the car, but you left my son out there. You being a man or whatnot, why you didn't even try to get out of the car, or, just anything. That car was behind us. You could have backed up. You could have did something. And not only that, my son was laying on the ground and this guy was over my son shooting. At the way that your car was, you could have even drove and hit the guy. Yeah, you would have ran over my son, but he could have still been alive.
So your son and him argued for a couple of minutes and then your son got out the car.
My son never was in the car. My son was actually walking past the car. So when the car pulled over, my son was like talking to him. So like his hand was on the car, whatnot. Like, that's why I thought they was, like I said, friends. But, after he shot my son and we went to try to chase the car and we couldn't find the car, and we came back home, people had started to gather. So I went into that, I guess, mother mode and also activist mode. I'm keeping everybody back. I'm clearing the scenes. I didn't want them to tamper and lose any kind of evidence, or whatnot that could have been, out there. And also taking pictures of my son. I have pictures in my phone right today of my son laying there. My son still had the key in his hand that he was going to move the car. That key was still in my son's hand. At that scene, I had 2 daughters. They was 14 and 15 at that time, and they was on the porch screaming. They was crying. But by that time, the police had already got there. I couldn't get up there to my daughters. They couldn't get back to me. People had started gathering on our street. There was just so many people that started coming. So I'm trying to keep, people back. My other daughters, had came. His girlfriend's baby mama, she came. They was like in braziers. It's nighttime.
Okay.
It was 8:53 that my son was actually murdered. And, as they was coming, it was night. They might have had on a bra and some shorts or whatever. But the police officers pulling guns, telling people to get back, get back. I had 2 other sons. One had a behavior issue. He was ODD, opposition of defiance. So the police is trying to tell. He was yelling and he was screaming, and he was.
How old were they? How old were the other sons at the time?
I want to say 17, 18, 18, 19, something like that. No, maybe they were 14, 15, yeah, 16, 17, something like that. But
teenagers.
yeah, they was teenagers. So the one with ODD, he was talking to me, and the police wanted to interject, and I'm telling the police, no, leave him alone. He's angry. He's looking at his brother, just got murdered. Because as I was driving, back up a little, my daughter, as I was driving to go after the guy, I'm steady trying to call 911, and every time I dial the phone to 911, my daughter's number was calling in. And when I finally answered the phone for them, I could just hear my daughter screaming, "Mama, somebody just killed Shawn." And that two things just keep playing in my head over and over is what that guy said to me and the screams, the cry of my daughter when I was able to answer that phone. And, the police, it was a chaotic scene. The police finally grabbed my son that was ODD and slammed him down, and then my other son that have seizures jumped on the police back to tell him to leave his brother alone. And I'm telling the police, please don't slam him because he has seizures. The jarring of his head or anything could cause more seizures. So here I am. I have one son on the ground that's deceased. I have now two sons in the back of a police car. I have two daughters that's on the porch screaming and hollering. I have my other children down the street, up the street, guns being pulled on them, telling them to get back. I didn't know what to do. I just started screaming. I started crying. I said, y'all might as well just kill me. Y'all might as well just shoot me now. It was just really crazy.
So how long did it take them to arrest the guy?
Well, first of all, it took them from 8:53, my son was murdered, to 5 o'clock in the a.m. to get my son up off the ground. It's freezing cold out there. It's March the 22nd, middle of winter. And, that was something also emotional.
What did they leave him out there so long for? What was their reasoning for doing that?
Because they was waiting on a search warrant. They said that they had to finish their investigation. They had to be able to go inside the house. Even with my permission, they couldn't just go inside the house. We had 7 cars in our yard at the time, and they needed to go through all of the cars. And it was it's ridiculous. But it went, even the evidence that they seen, because they had to give me the listing of what they found in the search warrant or what they took. And something came to my attention that they had took 2 cell phones, and they also took some sunglasses. I know my son didn't wear sunglasses. I know my son didn't wear glasses, and these was prescription glasses. So I called them, and I was like, "Can I see those glasses? Can I see what those glasses look like so I can see if I knew anybody that wore those glasses?" That night I gave the police a description of the guy and told them how tall he was, and I'm like, he was about 5'8", but if I'm 5'6", 5'7", and my hand is up here, he had to be, taller. Eventually that came back to bite me in the butt when we went to court, because the DA just kept saying, she said he was 5'8", and you can clearly see this man is 6'3". So it was like, I didn't know, I wasn't describing him. And I was like, all the time, my hand was up here.
And plus, you're under duress too, so.
But to go back and, it was nothing but God, because, I was able to give a very good description of him. I was able to give a description of the car. And other eyewitnesses that was out there, their description was totally, totally, totally different from what I seen. And
so whose was correct, yours or theirs?
Mine. It was a guy that was in the car with my son that night, and I feel like the police botched his investigation because he didn't want to give a statement, and they allowed him to leave.
Wow.
And he went to
eyewitness?
Eyewitness, exactly. They said they can't make nobody talk. And he was allowed to go to Vegas. He stayed in Vegas a week. But when he came back from Vegas, he had a totally different phone. He had a totally different phone number. So we believe that he called the person that was waiting on my son and was like, we're about to pull up, in order for...
Oh, so you think it was the guy helped him set
Absolutely,
his son up.
absolutely. Because he also got out of the car, and he was supposed to be one of his best friends, and he got out of the car with my son, and his car was parked like across the street. So when he heard the first shot, instead of coming over to my son to see what was going on, he got back in his car and bagged back up the street. He left the scene, like high and dry.
Now, did any information come out as far as like your son knowing the guy other than him being a customer, or just like a random customer? Like I might know somebody who know I fix cars, and they
Well, they knew of each other, but
Okay.
they didn't. They wasn't like traveling in the same circle or
Okay.
anything. But they knew people kind of traveling in the same circle. But nevertheless, it took them a year, a month, and 4 days to make an arrest.
To make an arrest.
To make an arrest, and that's all because I'm in a community. I held marches.
Exactly.
I held marches, and everywhere the police chief or the district attorney was on camera, I was telling my story, because once it came back, it was DNA evidence on the glasses, and they kept trying to say it wasn't enough DNA to connect them to anybody. And I'm like, you're gonna tell me there's no DNA when you wear your glasses? It's touching your nose, it's touching your ear, hair follicles. You're gonna tell me there's no DNA? So finally, someone heard me in one of those press conferences, and they sent them glasses to 2 other crime labs, one in Florida and one somewhere else. And it came back 1 out of 110 quadrillion match to the person that I identified that night.
So the guy left his sunglasses at the scene.
Yes, he dropped his sunglasses at the scene.
Okay.
And it came back 1 out of 100 quadrillion that it was the person that I had identified that night. And they finally made an arrest. They went to his home. He was a drug dealer. When they went to his home to arrest him, that day or that night, when they kicked in the door, him and his girlfriend was in there trying to flush the product. And he just felt like he was still Superman. He was like, I'll get a bond, I'll get out. But then when they said that we're arresting you for the murder of Shawn Lamar Harbin, they said his life like left his body. He's like in handcuffs, and he just like went down.
So within that year, that the time that it took them to arrest them, and I know, like, I don't know. Well, I'm from a small town, but I know, like, Charlotte is a little big, but I know the streets talk. During that time, was there, any information coming to you like, okay, this is the guy that did it, or this guy, or were you even telling, the police like this the guy?
Well, I didn't know
we
who
don't
the
need
guy was.
what do we call it? The forensic evidence with the glasses, like people talk and be like, okay, nah, this guy did it.
I didn't know who the guy was, but as I kept giving the description of the guy, one of my son's partners said, "Ma," and they all call me Ma.
Definitely.
They was like, "Ma, that looked like the dude Shawn was fixing his truck." So, one of his other friends went inside of that truck and got the registration. And as he brought the registration to the house for us to, see the registration, the name, the address, and all that, my daughter didn't want to give me the registration because she know how I am. But I'm quick.
Broadcast.
But I'm quick. No, I would have went. But I'm quick with a phone.
Okay.
So as she was talking, I took a picture of the registration, and I saw the address. And I went and I rode by that house, just what she didn't want me to do.
Okay.
And I saw that car that was at the scene that night, sitting in the driveway. In the driveway. And it was his mother's car. So I immediately text that information, the picture of the car, I took a picture of the car and the registration. I immediately sent that to the detectives. And the detectives them, it took them about 2 days, but they went and pulled that car. They found blood in the car. My son never got in the car. Never got in the car. But they found blood in the car.
Whose blood was it?
What I believe happened as he stood over my son and was shooting, blood splattered on his pants. And when it splattered on his pants, when he got in the car, he was kind of tall. His leg leaned on the side of the console, and that's where they found the blood.
Okay.
Wow.
But yet and still, after the first DNA test came, and it wasn't adequate enough for me, they said that that blood didn't match. Ironically, that blood didn't match my son, which didn't make a whole lot of sense to me from that crime lab. And I wanted them to also send that blood off to another crime lab. But what I was told was once that sample was completed, that blood was no longer eligible to be sampled again.
And so did they try to discount that evidence?
They did. They did. But again, when he was first arrested, he was on 100% house arrest.
So they gave him a bond?
He was on, in the beginning, he didn't get he stayed in jail for 9 months.
Okay.
He asked for a bond hearing after 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
They gave him a bond hearing. And the judge told the police, they said the same evidence that y'all bringing us a year, a month, and 4 days later, 13 months later, was the same evidence y'all collected that night. Why did it take y'all so long to make an arrest? And because of that reason, they said he had been out 13 months. The first 3 months he ran. He left Charlotte because he thought they was going to immediately come and arrest him because they put him on the news as a person of interest. He left town. They didn't try to find him. They didn't try to go question him or anything. So the judge was baffled. And he gave him a $250,000 bond.
So he made that bond?
He made, his whole family was drug dealers.
Okay.
Easily. Because they was asking for $500,000. They was asking for a $500,000 bond. And they gave him a $250,000. But he was on 100% house arrest. And he was on 100% house arrest for about 2 years. He went back before the judge because of COVID happened and the court processing was delayed. He went back for another hearing and asked, he said that he wanted to go to church and he needed to work.
He was playing that, okay.
So that particular judge said, asked him, do he watch TV? And he said yes. He said, well, you will attend Bedside Baptist. So he denied his bond. Okay. And he said, do you think what kind of work do you do? And he said, I'm in lawn care. The judge said, do you think I'm going to release you to say that you are going and do somebody's lawn, but you're actually distributing drugs to take drugs all around our city? And the judge.
So they knew he was a drug dealer.
Yes. Basically. So the judge denied his bond.
So then which one?
So a year later, almost a year later, he went back before another judge and she said, well, we done held this man in jail 2.5 years, 3 years, and we don't know when the court process is gonna open. What if he's not guilty and we holding him in jail? So she changed his conditions of his ankle monitor from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. So he was able to come outside to work or do whatever. But she said if she heard of him being 1 minute late, he was going to go back to jail until his trial. He had several violations.
But he still did.
But he didn't go back to jail.
Yeah, of course.
So when we went before another judge to talk about his violations, the judge actually told him, it seemed like you're having trouble getting in at 6 o'clock. We're going to extend your time to 10 o'clock.
So they actually was lenient on him.
Very lenient. Because even during that period of him being on an ankle monitor, he used his grandmother as an excuse to travel from Charlotte to Wisconsin or somewhere afar. He needed to go and spend time with his grandmother because she was dying. So there's more protection for the accused murderer than there is even for the victim.
And this was in Charlotte, Mecklenburg
And it was
County.
in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County.
So how long did it take them to finally bring him to trial or to justice?
It took 6 years to bring him to trial, and that's because he knew the law. He never made a statement. Okay. And he fired his lawyer maybe twice right before we went to trial. Okay. That way it would extend his time even longer because that lawyer had to come up to speed and, all of that kind of stuff. And it took us 6 years to go to trial.
And 6 years was I guess, in 2022, which was last year.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, did you actually go to trial, or just like so many other cases, did it end up in?
We went to trial.
You went.
We actually went to trial, and the only reason why we went to trial is, I want to say it was because of who they feel that I am in the community. You know, I'm a very strong advocate in the community. I had ran for mayor several times.
5 times.
At that
5 times
point-
mayoral candidate.
Yes, so
Lucille Puckett. Right?
yes.
All right,
So at that
remember
time it was
name.
4.
Okay.
So
you
the
got one
5th
more
time
answer
was
there.
this year.
All right.
So at that time it was 4. So because at one point they wanted to even drop the case.
So you mean to tell me, so because of who you are, your activism in the community, they didn't want to prosecute the guy?
No, that's the reason why they did. Because at first,
okay.
the detective was saying that they was going to, drop the case, and
Why
that's
would they
because
drop the case?
they wanted to drop the case because of how they say I identified the person. Because, I did my own investigation because it seemed like they wasn't doing anything. So I gave the description of his friends and stuff like that to the guy. And then when they said that who they thought it was, by the, description and then going to get the registration out of the car, people started bringing me Facebook posts, Facebook pictures. And they brought me about 5 or 6 Facebook pictures, and maybe the last Facebook picture that they had brought, chills went down my body. And I just knew at that point that was the guy. So I asked them to find me a video with him speaking. And they was able to do that. And when I heard him talking on that video, the same voice, the same tone, again, chills, because those words that he spoke to me, "shut the fuck up, bitch," resonated in my ear like a broken record. And that voice and that laugh that he gave on that video, I knew for a fact, 100%, I would say 99%, that was the person that murdered my son. And they say because I identified him by a Facebook picture and a voice, they couldn't allow that. So they wanted to throw the case out. But because of the DA, again, knew who I was, knew my advocacy, and it was election season.
So yeah, they definitely got to get a conviction.
They didn't want, they was going for a conviction, but like I said, it took 6 years.
So what happened eventually?
So
at the trial?
in trial, he had a high-powered lawyer.
Okay.
When I say a high-powered, high-paid lawyer, this lawyer got off a police officer who shot and killed a man, shot 12 bullets, but 10 of them hit him. And he got him off. So we already knew when he fired the court-appointed lawyer, lastly, after, firing 2 other lawyers and hired this high-paid lawyer, we already knew that either he was going to walk free or he was going to get, a hung jury. We knew it was going to be something. But anyway, we went to trial, and all the lawyer kept bringing up was the fact that I work with the police department. My organization work with the DA's office. I'm in the community. I got a connection, and the only reason why they bringing these charges was because of my work in the community and my connection with them being in the police force. He would ask me a question, and if I didn't know, I would say, "Well, I don't know," and he would say, "You mean to tell me you're running for mayor and you don't know?"
Okay.
So he played that with the juror, and when they say a juror of your peers, that is such a lie.
How many?
My son had 10 Caucasians
Okay.
and 2 blacks. One of the blacks was even one of the substitutes and not actually on the jury. So when you have someone politically running and you have a bunch of Caucasians, either they can be Republican and not liking Democrats, or they can like the person that's already in office, and she was a Democrat by name, but she was a Republican.
I got you.
So they could have been connected with her. But we also had several jurors, because this was the time of the George Floyd thing and, all that. And everybody's eyes was open. The Caucasians, the whites, whatever you want to call it, they was feeling like they owed us as black people something, because they saw George Floyd being killed, publicly. A person, a white man just murdered this black man. Eyes was open. But the jurors was like, we cannot see ourselves sending another black man to prison for the rest of his life. And you only have so many jurors that you can send off.
Substitute, yeah.
Yeah. So we was stuck with that. So as the trial went on, 3 weeks, because they had some hell of witnesses. They had sent off my son's clothing and all of these evidence to different labs, around. When I say the evidence was there, they even had the phone records. He knew the people that was across the street. As he was fleeing the scene, he made 14 back-to-back calls talking to the people across the street, trying to find out, what happened, and all of that. His sunglasses was in his yard. I was an eyewitness, and even a surprise witness to me was one of his cousins, first cousins. Actually got up on that stand and pointed him out and said, I guess during a family conversation or whatever it was. He said, and we still had a hung jury.
So we got the
wrap it up.
Wrap it up because
the hung jury was 6 to 6. It was 6 to 6.
Most of the time during a hung jury, they do another trial.
They decided not to.
So you mean to tell me that the gentleman that murdered your son is walking out the streets free?
Absolutely.
Right now.
Absolutely.
And so we talked about victim services, during the whole trial phase. Did you receive any services during the trial and even after the trial, since the guy didn't get convicted, or did they just leave you to the side?
Well, 2 weeks after my son was murdered, I joined Victim Services, and I was a part of Victim Services, and they were there for me, as I have been out in the community there for other people. I started an organization. It's called Take Back Our Hoods.
Take Back Our Hoods.
And HOODS stands for Helping Our Own Damn Selves.
Okay.
My organization goes out to the homicide scenes, out of just 100% of the homicide scenes. We're out at about 90, 95 scenes. We go out there, we support for the families. People run out of the house naked, might have diabetes, high blood pressure. We have things to assist them, whether it's a chair for them to sit down, a blanket if it's cold, ice water if it's warm, peppermints, orange juice, just whatever the need may be. We help our families from the onset of the tragedy, because this was not expected. We got them through the process where their family goes after they leave the coroner's office. We help them link up to a funeral home, get the victim services, because if they wasn't cause of their death, victim services give them up to $5,000 to help them pay for the funeral service. We're there for them throughout the whole court process as a support if they need us to be there. So we can hold their hand, let them know what is expected. And just trying to decrease the violence in our community is one of the missions for Take Back Our Hoods, and also to build safer neighborhoods, bring back community into the neighborhoods. And I know we need to be ending this, but if anyone wants to contact me or our organization, our email address is takebackourhoods with an S at yahoo.com. Our number that we can be reached is 980-522-8171. We have a Facebook page. If you want to be a part of the organization, make donations, or just be that support. We can always use your help within our organization, because families need you, and we want to be proactive versus reactive. We want to connect with these young people that's pulling these triggers. We need to get anger management. We need to get conflict resolution. We just need those supports. And to family members, if you know that you have a loved one that's carrying a gun, whether they're a felon or quick temper, if you know that there's anything that's going on out there in the street, if you see something, say something. Be preventive. They have hotline numbers that you can call anonymously to say, hey, my cousin is having a beef with someone and he's talking about he's going to, kill him. You would rather stop the murder before seeing someone's loved one taken away from them, but you're also losing your loved one because you can run, but you can't hide. Eventually, they will be caught. They will be serving prison time. It could be life. It could be 20 years, but that could be prevented if you speak up prior to the situation happening.
Well, I certainly want to say thank you, Ms. Puckett, for sharing your story, sharing your passion, and also for the work that you have been doing in the community of Charlotte, North Carolina. So if you guys want to connect with her, you have her information. Lastly, because we are at the VAS organization retreat, Victims Advocate Support Services, how has VAS helped you, within, dealing with this tragic situation?
It really has helped me also connect to other people, all around the world. We have people here from, Atlanta, far and near. My organization is in Winston-Salem, it's in South Carolina, just to support, just to love, to hear other people's stories, for people to hear your stories, the connection, the healing, to let you know that you're not alone. Because after a homicide, after a murder happened, you have so many people there at the time, but those people quickly go away. And they don't want you to talk about it. They're like, oh, you need to get over that. Oh, that's been a year, that's been 5, that's been 10 years. But people grieve in their own way. But this organization lets you know that you are not alone, and no matter how long you have to grieve, someone is here for you. In the midnight hour, when you want to cry, when you need somebody just to listen and you need to talk, you can call a member of VAS, and VAS will be there for you. If you need someone to be in court, you need support, they could connect you to someone close to you. VAS is an organization that you want to be a part of. It's a family that no one asked for. They didn't ask to be a part of VAS. They didn't ask for their loved ones to be taken. But because that happened to you, you have an organization that you can reach out to, that you can be a part of, and they will be there for you.
Yep. And if you do want to reach out to VAS, I'll give you my number so I can connect you with Miss Perry and Aunt Sue. My number is 919-587-7782. So, if anybody's suffering from the grief associated with losing a loved one to gun violence, know that there is a support group out here. And I thank once again Miss Lucille for sharing her story, her strength, her inspiration, her hope, her passion. And, I hope you continue to do the work that you have been called to do in the community.
And if you want to see a little bit more about VAS, they do have a website. It's vassnc.org. Look them up, and you will be glad you did. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless y'all. Peace and blessings.